Hey everybody, it's Brent in Central Arkansas. Today's video is going to be about a squash breeding that I'm doing, so I'm going to take you into the grow room in just a second and explain why I'm crossing the two I'm crossing and what my end goal is. Right now I'm underneath my little overhang here, and we're probably in the 40s, low 40s. This beginning week of March. I'm not exactly sure what day it is, but it's in the somewhere between the 7th and 9th. But anyway, you can see probably, or hear especially, that it is raining, and so it's miserable, which is typically the case this time of year and over the winter, and I'm still trying and succeeding, and most of the time, in crossing and breeding vegetables in my grow room. Let me show you where that is from where I'm sitting, and that is right there in that glowing room right there. So I'm going to take you in there and show you two plants and what my intentions are. Now, this is what my grow room looks like right now, and all of these plants are breeding plants. It's some project, some end goal that I intend to get to, but today we're going to talk about squash. So for this particular squash cross, I've got one here that is Madisons Cross. That is a yellow straight neck type of squash that I developed, that comes from well, several different squashes. I won't get into detail on that, but I've talked about it many times over the year. It is an open pollinated squash, meaning that the seeds come true every year, and it's a phenomenal squash. What I've got in the middle, I've also got a second one right here, same exact breeding, same exact plant as this one. So that one, that breeding is called, that cultivar or variety is called Madisons Cross, and I've been breeding that and finishing it since I think 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. In between the two is a bush Delicata, and I wanted to grow, the end goal is to create a very sweet dual purpose squash, one that can be eaten immature like a summer squash, which this one is done most of the time, and then when it matures like Delicata is known for, it can be eaten as a winter squash. They're both varieties are Pepo, C. cucurbita Pepo. Anyway, that's one of the 4 different species of squash, Pepo, so they're interbreedable. Okay, so this Delicata version I chose, you can see one of the small fruits right there. I chose this particular Delicata because it is a bush Delicata. There's not too many bush Delicatas. Most Delicatas grow on vines similar to this butternut here, but they sprawl a lot more. But this one is a bush Delicata. I'm not sure where it came from, maybe Cornell, but anyway, it has powdery mildew resistance, which is good. But the primary reason why I chose it was because it's a bush Delicata. Now my variety here is Madison's Cross, is a very, very small and super productive yellow squash, and it has, if you look here, you can see how it's yellow here on the stem and bright yellow here. It has the B gene, meaning that it's a bright yellow. It is so prevalent in my line that the whole stem has turned yellow. And if you look here on this Delicata, see how this stem here is green? The fruit is also going to be green until it gets very ripe and turns a pale yellow. But anyway, for the most part, it stays green like that its entire life. If you take a straight neck squash or a crook neck squash that is also yellow like this one, this stem part will still be green, and it's subject to disease. I can't remember what it's called. Basically the whole thing turns green and it's just not very appetizing. But this doesn't, this Madison's Cross line does not do that because of this B gene. And the B gene it just makes a very, very beautiful squash because it's so vibrant. Now this squash, if you look here, it is ultra prolific. It has a smaller footprint than straight neck and crooked neck squash. It makes a smaller plant, and but the fruit is very close to the same size, only it's a denser fruit because of the background what I bred it to. It's a very dense fruit. It has a smaller seed cavity. I've got videos on this. You can go back in my channel and look up the various videos on it, but it has a smaller seed cavity and it has a sweeter profile. The thing that also is different about this, because a winter squash was part of the development into this one, an acorn squash, I'll go ahead and tell you. Anyway, because of that, when this thing gets really older and matures, you know, to the point where it has seeds, the outer casing gets really, really hard, and it can be stored for months into the winter. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to combine this capability with Delicata, which is not known to store for very long at all. So this Madisons Cross is already sweet. Delicata, I'm hoping, will bring in more sweetness to it, the hybrid of the two, and it will, Madisons Cross will make this where it's a longer storing squash, and hopefully even more creamier than Madisons Cross, because when Madisons Cross gets very hard shell and it's in storage for a month or two, it gets kind of a rougher than potato type texture. Totally edible. I cut it up and I put it in soups and stuff like that, but it's not the sweet that a winter squash can be if it's stored. So I'm hoping to create both a summer and a winter squash, a dual purpose squash, by combining these two plants and breeding for that. So it's a little bit ambitious, but it's not, hopefully, you know, it's an interesting cross for me. Now, if you know anything about Delicata, you'll know that this, as it matures, it gets stripes in it. And I know from crossing my squash with the zucchini, a concerta zucchini, that the hybrid is often bright yellow like this with the stripe pattern. So it'll be really fun to see what the hybrid will look like, and then how it matures, how it eats both as an immature squash, like baby, you know, 6 inches, 7 inches, like most people eat summer squash, and then again how it does into the mature stage where winter squashes are often eaten. Now, if I don't get the exact goals I'm looking for, then I will cross it back to whichever parent that I need to bring more into, and I'm probably going to be crossing it back into Delicata to bring in more Delicata into it. I know that Madisons Cross is pretty dominant. I crossed it with yellow straight neck, and most of the qualities from Madisons Cross came through instead of the yellow straight neck. So it's very interesting. Really looking forward to this cross, and I just wanted to share it with you.
How long do we gotta stay here for people we don't know in one lines? All of the clothes are designer, fast cars, and who knows who. Yeah, I know what they wanna say.